Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Captivating Stories. Today, a Euro's tale is sure to keep you hooked from start to finish. Relax and join us as we unfold this intriguing narrative. I, 36 male, and my wife, 31 female, were married for 6 years before I learned something heartbreaking that destroyed our marriage. Before we got married, my wife and I were very good friends, and our relationship was strong because the organizations we worked for were on the same street and we used to see each other all the time. But because I was always searching for greener pastures, I had to move to a different state where I still live. After I traveled to resume my new job, aside from my best friend and family, my wife was the only person that always called to check on me, and we'd talk on the phone the whole evening or chat with each other throughout the day. It felt great to know someone out there cared about me, and in no time, I caught feelings for her. After months of being apart, I asked her out, and since she was also single, she said yes, and that's how our love story began. Even though our relationship was more of a long-distance one, I still felt loved and trusted her so much. On my end, I tried to communicate with her as much as possible, and we took turns visiting each other on weekends or whenever we were free. After 2 years of our long-distance relationship, we got married, and she was forced to relocate and live in my state. Luckily, she got a job in her field, and the pay was great. She was also very passionate about her career, and she quickly climbed the ladder in her organization. It had to do with the extra professional certifications she got and her years of expertise. Marriage-wise, our relationship was great, and we were both happy, me especially. I loved her so much and did not imagine being with any other woman except her, and I believed we would grow old together. Initially, before we got married, we agreed we would not have kids yet because I didn't think I was ready to be a father, but after 1 year of marriage, I changed my mind. We talked about it again, and she was eager to stop taking her birth control pills, and fortunately for us, after a couple of months, she got pregnant and gave birth to a boy. The birth of our son came with an extra dose of happiness, and he even motivated me to work harder so I could take care of him. I even took an additional online job as a freelancer to earn some extra bucks. On the other hand, my wife did not need an additional job since taking care of our child was already working on its own, and I encouraged her to work very little and rest more, and I would take care of the rest. Eventually, after our son was almost a year old, she resumed work, and everything continued the way it was. The only difference in our lives was our son. Some months after my wife resumed work, I noticed she started dressing differently, which was unlike her. Before our son came, she never really cared about what she wore, and would literally wear anything as long as colors were right, but after she resumed work, everything changed. The thing is, I did not have a problem with her dressing differently and being conscious of what she wore. I was more concerned with how the dresses made her look. For someone who has recently given birth, her stomach was visible through her tight clothes, but she didn't mind. She would even go as far as wearing blouses that would expose her boobs and something a little bit under her hips. I complained about her new choice of clothes, and told her I wasn't comfortable with them, but her response was always, "I'm not wearing them for you. I'm wearing them for me," and she would leave the house in anger. It got so bad that we started fighting about it, until I finally found out she decided to change her wardrobe because of how she felt in her skin. Indeed, her body had changed, and she added a lot of pounds because of her pregnancy, and according to her, she wanted to look and feel younger, so she started dressing differently. Honestly, I felt terrible that I had been bugging her to stop dressing like a call girl, and I apologized and never mentioned it again. Meanwhile, our son was always with my wife, and we enrolled him at a daycare, where my wife would drop him off in the morning before going to work, and I would pick him up by 3 p.m. every day. One day, I was supposed to go and pick him up as usual, but something came up at the office, and I couldn't leave. So I tried calling my wife multiple times to inform her about the change of plans, but she wasn't responding. It was even some minutes past 3, and I didn't want her to think I had gone to get her son when I didn't. After waiting to see if she would return any of my calls, and she didn't, I called her organization to try and get in contact with her, but to my greatest surprise, I was told she no longer worked there, and she was sacked a few months earlier for sleeping with an intern. At first, I looked at my phone screen to be sure I called the right organization, and it was. It didn't make sense because my wife left home by 7:30 every morning, and most times, she would return late in the evening because she claimed she did overtime. I was so shocked that I lost focus for a couple of minutes before responding to the person on the phone. I ended up asking a colleague of mine to cover for me, and I went to take our son home. When I got home that day, I couldn't stop thinking about what I found out. To even show how good she was at pretending, she would come home and still pretend to work on her laptop so I wouldn't suspect anything. So, eventually, she returned home that evening and talked about her day at work, and all the things that happened. They were all lies, and I kept my cool, played alone, and pretended like I didn't know she had been fooling me. That same day, before I